Hey moms, welcome to Asymmetrical Symmetry in your postpartum healing. So what this basically means is because of your pregnant posture, a lot of movements, at least in the shoulders, have become a little asymmetric. Also, labor and delivery has probably shifted some asymmetrical movements in your pelvis as well, meaning two things are probably moving away from one another or against each other. So you'll find a lot of unbalance when in your postpartum healing. So this class is really to focus on creating more symmetry, creating more balance in the hips and the pelvis in your postpartum journey to find more relief. So we'll be doing a lot of seated postures, a lot of kneeling postures, a lot of prone, so on your stomach, and supine, laying on your back poses today. You will need perhaps a pillow or a bolster. Yoga bolster or pillow is just going to be fine. And what we'll actually use quite a lot of today is going to be a yoga block. So if you have a block, even if you have a book, something that's going to give you a little bit of advantage to place it between the arms, the legs, or the thighs. So let's go ahead and get started, and I want you to find a comfortable cross-legged position. So if you are quite early along in your postpartum healing, I always recommend that these videos start anyway after 6 or 12 weeks. So if that's the case and you're still finding that you need a little support in your hips and pelvis, please feel free to use a block. So we can sit on a block to find more comfort. When you elevate the hips, it just takes some more stress off the knees and the pelvis. So I'm just going to sit flat on the floor for myself, but I'm going to have that block handy because we'll be using it in a moment. So let's keep the palms of the hands facing down towards the knees. Lift the shoulders up towards the ears and then roll and place the shoulders on the back. So you want to feel this nice lift up the front line of the body so there's some space between the ribs and the pelvis. And then we'll gently close the eyes. So let's take a nice deep connected breath towards your own heart and then a nice big audible exhale out. So once again, take a nice full inhalation to lift and expand. We're breathing towards the heart, just recognizing all the hard work you're doing with a nice big audible exhale to let go. And in this moment, you're letting go of any tension in the physical body, perhaps in the shoulders or the hips, any emotional stress or strain that no longer serves you at this moment as you prepare for your practice. So finding the inhalations as we root down into the sit bones to lift and lengthen the ribs away from the hips. And upon the exhalations, trying to soften through the tops of the shoulders and also letting go of any tension held within the lower part of your spine. So allow the lower back to release as the pelvis begins to settle into the earth. We keep the space between the eyebrows center relaxed. Your lips are together. Separate the teeth and just let the tongue slowly fall to the bottom of the mouth. So we become very unbalanced as well in our breath, breathing primarily or dominantly in one lung versus the other, but also as new moms, probably breathing quite a lot in towards your chest. So when you inhale, do you find that you lift your shoulders automatically towards the ears? So let's create a little balance within the breath. Place one hand on your belly and one hand on your chest and heart. And on this inhalation, just recognize where you have the tendency to breathe first. So where does your hand begin to rise first? Is it the belly or is it in the chest? So if your breath is in the chest, I want you on the next inhalation to consciously breathe into the belly. And if your breath feels like it goes to the belly first, can you lift and breathe into the chest and heart where the hand is placed on the heart first? So first is just try to change the way in which you breathe. So if you're a chest breather, I want you to draw your inhalations in towards the belly. And if you're a belly breather, I want you to try to draw and extend the breath towards the chest and the heart. So essentially breathing in the opposite direction. On that inhalation, we find length and expansion as the ribs continue to move away from the pelvis, sitting up tall. And upon the exhalation, still letting go of any unwanted tension that develops in our physical sense. And then can you go a little further with this breath and see if you can breathe into both hands equally? So when you inhale, now can you breathe into the belly, ribs, and chest as you sit up nice and tall? And upon the exhalation, continue to let go of the shoulders, the spine, and the base of the pelvis. So can you use the breath to breathe into the palms of the hands now equally versus isolating that movement? after this nice, slow, long, deep exhalation out, please bring the palms of the hands together with the thumbs connected at the heart center. So this is just always acknowledging the heart, your own heart. We're doing a lot of work as moms. So take a nice deep inhalation, just in that deep recognition for yourself. And as you exhale, we gently bow the head. And we do so, of course, to honor all the hard work and dedication and sacrifices that we are making for our babies. Place the palms of the hands at the knees, but keep the head exactly as it is for a moment. So keep the shoulders back. So just creating a nice stretch down the back line of the neck. Go ahead and as you exhale, we'll roll the right ear over to the right shoulder. So now your right ear is paralleling the right shoulder, chin point slightly forward. Check in with the shoulders so the shoulders feel level, as well as the sit bones. So making sure that your right sit bone feels just as heavy as that left sit bone. Lowering the chin down towards the collarbone again. So I want you to kind of follow the directions here. And then as you exhale, letting the heaviness now of your left ear fall over to the left shoulder. So shoulders are even, pressing firmly through the sit bones. Keep lifting the chest. And as you exhale, let the weight of your now left ear fall towards the left shoulder. So we're stretching and elongating down the right side. So once more, let's lower the chin, allowing the chin to just fall above the heart for a moment. Shoulders drop back. Take one more big breath in. And then as you exhale, let's bring the gaze to look forward. Wonderful. Stretch the legs in front. Give your legs just a nice little shakeout. And then I want you to reverse the direction of the cross of your shins. So we get into really good habits of favoring one side as we sit down in a cross-legged position. So this is always working with our non-dominant side. And then I want you to go ahead and grab whichever block, whatever prop you're using. And it's kind of in this rectangular position. Doesn't have to be necessarily really wide. And we'll place it in between the forearms. So you can kind of lay it down on one thigh and then allow your forearms to kind of embrace the block, and then we'll bring it forward. So in this position, we're just going to stretch the arms directly in front, and I want you to squeeze your forearms into the block with the palms of the hands facing towards one another. Sit up nice and tall. Find the slight movement of the sides of the pelvis to the midline of the body so we have some core support. We're going to work with some movements in the shoulders. So what you're going to do is draw the shoulders directly back. So as if you're squeezing the shoulder blades together. And then you're going to lift your shoulders up towards the ears, but it's the shoulders that are moving. You're going to press and draw the shoulders forward. Now like you're rounding your upper back, and then move the shoulders down. So we're working in kind of like square positions. So you're going to draw your shoulder blades back, squeeze the shoulder blades together. Don't allow the front of the ribs to pop forward. Good. Lifting the shoulders up so there's a little bit of a shoulder shrug, but the shoulders are still broad. Press the shoulders forward. So you're going to lean your fingertips forward, but the shoulders are still over the hips, and then we draw them down the back. Okay, so it's like we're working in a square position with our shoulders. And I want you to do these just a few more times. It's going to really start to activate some movement in your shoulders. So we're working with increasing that range, right? So as a nursing mother, your shoulders are extremely tight. So this is just a nice way to create a little bit of range in the shoulders. Perfect. So I'm going to show you from the side for just one moment in case there's any confusion. So you can take a moment's rest if you need. So when we bring the block to shoulder height, we're going to go back with the shoulders, squeezing the shoulder blades together. So moving the shoulders onto the back. We're going to lift them up towards the ears. So there's a shoulder shrug. We're going to press the shoulders forward. So we're creating more now width and space between the shoulder blades, and then we kind of lower the shoulders down the back. So quickly, this is sort of what the movements look like. But what you're trying to do is just move from the shoulders. Awesome. I'm going to stay in this position because we'll work with up and down movements now. So increasing some range in the scapulas. Just place the hands for a moment on the thighs. Roll the shoulders back just a few more times, creating some movement, even if you want to roll your shoulders forward. And then we'll pick up the block the same way we did. So place it onto the thighs, hug your forearms around. And then this time, we're going to place the block so it's just in front of the chest, palms of the hands face towards each other. And at this point, my elbows align with the shoulders. So I'm going to draw in through the lower belly, so sides of the pelvis to the midline of the body. More like you're wrapping around the front of the abdomen versus just pushing it back. And then here, you're going to squeeze your forearms into the blocks, and we're going to slowly start to lift the block up. How high really depends on what that feels like in your upper thoracic and your shoulders. And you're going to slowly start to draw the block down. That's it. So all we're trying to do here is mobilize the shoulder blades. So So your shoulder blades are probably pretty tight. All the muscles around that upper thoracic and the shoulders, the lats, the delts, extremely tight as new moms and as nursing moms. Okay. So here the shoulders sort of want to roll forward. We're keeping the shoulders back and we're just gliding the shoulder blades up and down. So rather than kind of mechanically moving through your arms, can you really start to feel that movement through your shoulder blades? So the shoulder blades lift up and then we kind of draw the shoulder blades down the whole while squeezing the block. Okay. So one more time, we're going to hold and pause up, squeeze the block, just close the eyes, hug the sides of the pelvis and the midline of the body, and then slowly draw the arms down. Another big stretch. Good. Just rest the block in front, hands on the thighs. Once again, take a moment to roll the shoulders back, rolling the shoulders forward. Good. Some pretty big movements. Awesome. So let's go ahead and stretch the left leg straight, and you'll hug your right knee in. So we're interlacing the fingers, sitting up nice and tall. So if you had a cesarean birth, you might want to take your leg over to the side just a little bit. So just making sure there's no tension or pressure on the incision. But we really have to use this right leg strongly. So we're going to flex the left foot with the toes pointing up, and then we're kind of hugging and interlacing our fingers in front of the right shin. So we're trying to find a really nice long spine and a lifted chest. Okay. And then here we're going to create thoracic glides. So it's sort of like the position of cat-cow. I want you to go ahead and sort of draw your chin down towards the chest and let your whole spine release back. So it's like we're curling from the chin, working all the way down. And then the opposite movement, I want you to slowly start to kind of roll up vertebrae by vertebrae until the shoulders roll back and it lifts the gaze. So first point of contact is going to be your chin drawing down towards the chest. And slowly lean back, but we want to keep the front of our abdomen connected to the right thigh. So it's also helping us stay a little bit more long. Good. So you're just working with your breaths. With every inhalation, we kind of lift the chest, lengthen through the crown. Nice big exhale, we'll roll back. Chin down, shoulders forward. We lean into that upper thoracic, but also to the lower part of the spine. Perfect. So part one here, we're just working, keeping the abdomen to the thighs. So the movements are going to be pretty slow, and especially for you, if you're practicing this about 6 weeks, this is some pretty nice, gentle movement for you. So we'll stretch that right leg straight, and we'll draw the left leg in. So interlacing the fingers, so your knee can be in front of your shoulders or chest, or you can take that leg a little bit wider. We have a nice, strong right leg sitting up nice and tall. So this time we're going to peel off a little bit of that thigh. So standing up nice and tall, chin is parallel. We're very gently sort of tipping the pelvis forward. And then on the exhalation, we need to draw your chin down, shoulders roll forward, and we begin to round. And then you can slowly start to lean back a little bit, but drawing the shoulders down and forward. So inhale, tip the pelvis, sit up nice and tall, chin is parallel. Exhale, chin draws down, shoulders roll forward, and then we can lean back a little bit more if you choose. So it's not necessarily about the chin pulling down to give that upper thoracic round. I want you to imagine rolling down vertebrae by vertebrae. So that neck, the upper shoulders, and then eventually into the low back, right? And then inhale, we sit up nice and tall. So one more time, take a big breath in, chin draws down, shoulders roll forward. We feel this movement through the mid-back and the lower spine, and then we slowly start to roll up. Wonderful. Stretch both legs in front, give your legs a nice little shake out, and then you'll move your heels to the left or right side, and we'll come directly forward onto hands and knees. So please, mama, make yourself really comfortable. We're going to be in a kneeling position for a few moments. So if you need to fold up your mat or place a blanket underneath your knees, please go ahead and do so. Comfort is key when it comes to the knees. So the first thing we're going to do is try to keep the hips really even. So both hip pointers are pointing down. And all I want you to do here is work with the back leg. So we're going to take a nice big breath in. On the exhalation, we're going to slowly start to draw the right leg back. Good. Keeping the toes towards the floor and pressing through the heel of the foot without leaning into the left arm or the left knee. And then we're going to slowly start to slide this right leg back. Okay. So big breath in. We do ground down through the palms of the hands. Slide the left leg back. Curl the toes under, pushing through the heel of the foot. So what we're trying to do, the intention of this pose is to really isolate slow and steady symmetrical movements in the hips. So nothing else is moving except that back leg. And the hips aren't rising above one another. So as we stretch the right leg back, we still want to feel like the back of the right side of the pelvis is just as even as the left side. Hug in through the sides of the pelvis to keep that lower belly engaged and the lower back supported. We'll take one more big breath in. And then as you exhale, draw the left leg in. Take your knees wide, big toes to touch. Let's just reach the sit bones back and the arms forward. So taking whichever variation of your wide-legged child's pose, you can stack your forearms on top. You can draw down onto the forearms. If it feels a little bit easier to even walk your hips slightly forward, that's fine. So we take a nice big inhalation. We're just sort of breathing into the back line of the body. And then as you exhale, let the weight of the sit bones begin to fall back towards the heels. So one more big breath in. As you exhale, let's slide the hands underneath the shoulders and we'll press forward onto all fours. So we're going to take that position to part 2 using a block. And here's our asymmetrical movements. So we're going to place the block underneath the right shin. Okay? So if that's not comfortable, you can use perhaps a towel or a blanket underneath the shin bone because the shin bone is directly on top of the block. It's nice to have sort of foam blocks or cork blocks. So we'll work with bird dog, but we're only going to take the leg back to begin. So you're going to ground down through the right leg, and I want you to lift that left leg high. Hug in through the sides of the pelvis. You're going to slowly, without adjusting your hips, begin to draw the left leg behind. Flex the foot, toes point down. That's the pose. We're going to do a couple of these. So deep breath in. On the exhalation, draw the knee back in. Good. Take a big inhale, and then on the exhalation, we're kicking the leg out. So this is creating a bit more strength in the pelvis because we're playing around with balance and we're keeping that weight in the right leg, yes, but we're only extending the back leg, that left leg, as far as we can go until we feel like there's a balance in the pelvis. The gaze looks down, the crown of the head draws forward, and we're still hugging the sides of the pelvis to the midline of the body. So one more big breath in, draw the foot out, flex the foot, toes point down. Play around with even pointing the foot, see what that does, holding that balance, and then we'll draw the left leg in. We need to just allow the left shin to shift off to the side, but you're not resting your shin on the floor. So this isn't going to lift the right pelvis a bit higher than the left. We're just pausing and holding, giving the right side of the pelvis a nice big stretch, and then we'll exhale the left shin to the floor. Please take the block just in front of you for a moment. We've got to give our wrists a bit of a shake out. So draw your sit bones towards your heels with the elbows on the floor. So just making fists with the wrists and rotating to the left and to the right in different directions. Bringing that weight forward in the shoulders can put a lot of tension on the wrist. Give them a nice big shake out, and then we'll slide the hands, drawing back onto hands and knees. Keeping the block forward, we'll spread the fingers nice and wide. And then with an exhalation, let's lift the hips up into our downward facing dog. So if you feel lightheaded, keep the gaze to look forward. Just some movement here with a nice deep bend into one knee, rooting and pressing through its opposite heel. This is where we can probably already feel maybe those slight and subtle differences in the right hip versus the left. And then we'll bend into the knees, coming back down into all fours. So we'll take that block now underneath that left shin. So you can probably see here just a bit of a better angle with the right. So at this moment, I'm going to hover the right shin just above the floor. So my left pelvis is a bit higher. Shift the arms, spread the fingers nice and wide, and then we'll lift the hip just a little bit higher so the hips are parallel. The shin is kind of hovered above the floor. And then we'll slowly, without adjusting that left hip, see if you can stretch that right leg back. So we're going to flex the foot, crown of the head is forward, lower belly engaged, so sides of the pelvis to the midline of the body. So keep the gaze to look down, so there's lots of space between the shoulders and the ears. So you're going to slowly kick the leg back, flexion through the foot, toes pointing down, you're squeezing your glute in your legs, but trying not to lean into your left hip. So even though the left hip is grounded, we're still actively working with the right leg. And this is just helping to strengthen and create more symmetry in our hips and pelvis. So depending on how you labored, if you were laboring on your back and your sacrum got a bit compressed, please see a pelvic floor therapist to adjust that a little bit for you, because it can really challenge your extension in your spine. Last ones, when we work with 5, we're just going to lower the shin so it's hovering. And I just want you to feel that stretch in the left glute and the left side of the back. Still hug the sides of the pelvis of the midline of the body, press away from the floor, and then we'll lower the shin. So we'll remove the block, placing it in front. So here's a stretch for the wrist while we're on hands and knees, hugging the sides of the pelvis of the midline of the body. So creating a little bit of that core support. I just want you to lean your shoulders forward, so beyond the fingertips until you feel a stretch. And as you look down at your wrist, make sure the crease of the wrist is sort of straight or parallel. And then press into the palms of the hands and just see how far you can go back, moving your sit bones towards your heels. So we'll lean forward, seeing where that weight is, shifting the weight, the shoulders over top of the wrist. You can even curl the toes under. And this time as we go back, moving your sit bones towards your heels and creating a little bit of a foot stretch. So once again, we're going to take the shoulders forward. You can point the toes behind. This time, try to keep that flexion in the wrist. And as you lean your sit bones back, can you peel the fingers and the palms? So you're pressing down through the wrists, release the wrist crease and kind of the thumb. And then as you draw forward. Okay. So essentially trying to keep this position. We're just working in sort of axial movements. Lift the fingers off the floor. Keep kind of the amount of the thumb and the wrist on the floor. And then we'll lean forward. Okay. So each and every time, maybe going a little bit further. Good. Sending the sit bones towards the heels. Knees are wide to accommodate that space in the belly. Awesome. Walking the hands slightly forward, curl the toes under. Once again, we'll just lift the hips into our downward facing dog. So have a nice deep bend into one knee again, rooting and pressing through its opposite heel. So moving from hip to hip and side to side, just to get off those knees. And then we'll exhale, bend into the knees, coming back down onto all fours. So sit bones towards the heels, changing angles here. So we'll start to walk the hands all the way over to the left side. So however far they go, forehead to the floor, or stack your forearms, or cross your left forearm so the forehead can rest on something. So little lateral stretch here. We're taking a nice big inhalation. You're breathing through the right side of the ribs. And then as you exhale, you gently press the right sit bone back. If the forehead's to the floor, you can also place your left hand on top of the right. Sometimes it's the right hand on top of the left. And that'll give you a little bit more of that lateral stretch. So just pausing here, allowing at least the wrists and the hands to relax. One more big breath in. Let's look towards the hands. You'll walk the hands now as far over to the right side. So it's the left fingertips that point a little further forward, keeping space between the shoulder and the ear. And you can cross the right arm. So the forehead rests on the arm, pausing here for a moment. We now have a big breath in through the left side of the ribs. And as you exhale, we gently allow that left sit bone to fall back towards the heels. Both arms are straight and the forehead is comfortably resting on the floor without aggravation in the shoulders. You can place the top of the right hand on the left hand on the right, adding just a little bit more movement. So the big breath in. On this exhalation, let's look at the hands. Walk the hands back into the center and then slide the hands towards your feet. Perfect. Here's where we'll transition ourselves onto our abdomen. So of course we have bony protruding bones in the front of our pelvis. If they kind of really dig down into the mat, please make sure that you place a blanket underneath the pelvis. And this is also if you had a cesarean birth and there's an incision, it's really nice to just add perhaps just a little extra cushioning of a folded blanket underneath the front of the belly. So if you feel like you need a bit more support, just fold. And it's not very high, just enough where you feel some comfort. So prone positions are really lovely because it's going to help a little bit with the uterus, at least moving the uterus back to its original size, which can take at least that first 12 weeks. So we'll bring the elbows underneath the shoulders, and this pose is called Sphinx Pose in our practice. Feet are hip width apart, toes are going to naturally just kind of point behind, and the tops of the feet are resting on the floor. So with the elbows underneath the shoulders, this is bringing a really big back bend into your practice. It's called extension. We sort of avoided a lot of these poses when we were pregnant. So if this feels like it's too much, I want you to slide your elbows forward, lower the chest, and that'll decrease the extension in your back. If you want a little bit more, however, it feels like it's really nice and you're not in compression, so compression sort of feels like bone on bone, then keep the elbows underneath the shoulders. You'll gaze to look forward. I just want you to close the eyes. So this is a really wonderful way to passively stretch the back, especially that lumbar spine. So you're going to inhale, press away from the forearms and the hands. And then as you exhale, I want you to try to relax your lower back. So what that might feel like is the back of the sacrum kind of falls towards the front of the pubic bone. So big inhalation, we're pressing away from the forearms. On the exhalation, can you just move your breath into the spaces where you feel this pose the most? So if it feels like it's way too much, lower the chest. You can also engage the lower belly, so sides of the pelvis or the midline of the body. So if you're squeezing very gently the front of the abdomen, not pulling the abdomen back, but just around the front of the abdomen. Good. One more big breath in, and then on the exhalation, I want you to fold your forearms on top of one another and rest your forehead on the stacked forearms. Lift your heels above your knees and just let your feet drag out to the left side and then to the right. So sort of like windshield wipers with your heels, which will start to kind of internally and externally rotate those hips a bit. It can be nice on the lower back. Good. We are going to keep the forehead to the floor. So I want you to take your arms out into a cactus arms position, meaning your wrist aligns with your elbows align with your shoulders. And the whole part of this pose is to keep the forehead on the floor. So we're going to work with some asymmetrical movements in the pelvis to really bring some symmetry back into that left and right side. As moms, we're really good at holding a baby onto one hip versus the other. So this is going to be helpful for that. Keeping the forehead to the floor, I want you just to kind of feel, and maybe you don't feel your hip pointers at this point, and that's okay, but once we start to lift one leg at a time off the floor, you'll feel it a little bit more. With that in mind, the hip pointers are going to stay down. So it's not about necessarily how high you lift your leg. It's more about keeping that bone on the floor. So take a big inhalation. On the exhalation, we're going to press down into the right hip. You're going to lift your right leg off the floor. You're just going to pause and hold. Your toe will point back. So at this point, you should feel a little bit of that palpation or proprioception of your right hip pointer in the floor. We'll lower the right leg. Pause. Just relax the below back for a moment in the glutes. And then we'll contract again. So big breath in. On the exhalation, you're going to lift your left leg up just enough where you can start to feel the hip pointer. So the left hip pointer and the right are on the floor. Point the toe back, keeping the forehead down. So keeping the forehead down allows our ribs to stay in place, and it helps our back feel a bit more supported while we isolate the pelvis. Relax the glutes and the pelvis. So taking a nice resting breath in. On this next exhalation, we'll lift the right leg up, keep the forehead down. Nice full breaths into the front and sides of the ribs, and then we'll lower the right leg. So I'd like you to do this a couple more times, making sure again that you take a normal rest and breath in between. We're just lifting up the leg, and we're trying to hold that leg for essentially however long we can. So remember, it's about the quality of the movement versus the quantity. So if you want to hold this for like 5 or 6 breaths on one side, go ahead and do so. It's really going to help to strengthen the muscles around the hips and pelvis. We want the glutes to kick in because we want the glutes nice and strong to help support the pelvic floor. Good. So with the left leg, toes pointing back, make sure you feel both hip pointers in the floor. Remember, it's not about how high you lift the leg as much as it is about the intelligence of the pose. So keeping the hips down. Good. Great also for SI issues. So if you had sort of SI problems in your pregnancy, this can sometimes relieve that or find some relief in that. And we'll lower the left leg. Stack the forearms once again forward. Just rest your forehead on the stacked forearms. And this time just kind of shimmy your hips to the left and right. So as if you're just shaking your hips out, as if something sort of fell on your back. Good. And then we'll just pause for a moment. Take a big breath in. You're just breathing into the back body. And then as you exhale, allowing the weight of the back to begin to draw forward. Let's come back onto those forearms, so the elbows underneath the shoulders, and we'll work with a half frog pose. So I want you to bend your right knee, bringing your right knee towards your shoulder. Shin is parallel, so it really depends on what you're feeling in your pelvis. You can lower the leg a little bit, okay, more intensity. The thigh is parallel, at least with the front edge of the mat. So pressing onto the forearms, elbows underneath the shoulders. Remember that this is more advanced, is elbows underneath the shoulders. If that feels like it's way too much on the right side of your back or pelvis, you're going to lower your arms towards the floor. Okay, you can even at some point rest the forehead on the stacked forearms, which is where we'll eventually go. So for now, with the elbows underneath the shoulders, we're trying to breathe into the right side. You're going to notice a lot on the right side, and that's okay. Taking a big inhalation here. So on the exhalation, wherever you're feeling the sensation of this pose, it's usually kind of tracking down along the paraspinals on the right side, or those serratus anterior, even your QL muscles. So on the exhalation, can you just allow the front of your right thigh, hip, pelvis to release? Okay, so we're acknowledging the tightness on the right side, and we're just trying to move our breath into those spaces. Pretty big movement. I love this one for, again, working on that asymmetrical movements in the pelvis. So when you labor on your back and you have two different forces kind of holding onto your knees, that can really kind of wreak a bit of havoc on our pelvis. So that's why these poses and these movements, even though they're subtle, are very important for your postpartum healing. Let's lower and stack the forearms on top of one another. We're going to keep the knee sort of essentially exactly as it is. You can lay the forehead down, and then all you're going to start to do is pick up the right leg. So the knee stays down, but you're picking up the right ankle and foot. So it's going to bring a little internal rotation into your hips. It can be kind of nice again on that SI joint, and then you're just lowering the leg down. That's all you're going to do. So forehead maybe to the floor. You're just taking more of a resting position here. We slowly lift the leg up. We want to pause and hold. Okay, challenging again some of those rotators, those deeper external rotators. This is more of that internal rotation movement, so it's more of those deep internal rotators. Good. So just seeing how far within your pain-free range of motion, please, incredibly important to follow what feels right in your body in this moment. On the exhalation, we like to lift the leg up. We pause and hold. On the exhalation, we like to lower the leg down. So working with the diaphragm as we exhale to lift, so there's not that extra pressure on the pelvic floor. So pretty nice, gentle movements. Good. Okay, with the forehead to the floor, I just want you to slowly straighten that right leg to meet the left. Tops of the feet are on the floor. Go ahead once again, just kind of give your hips a little shake out from the left and the right side. And then we'll switch sides. So it's certainly more comfortable to be on the forearms, especially if you are a nursing mom, is to stay with a little bit more height, lift it so there's not a ton of pressure. We'll go ahead and switch with that left leg down. So we'll lift that left knee to that frog position where perhaps the knee aligns with the hip, and then adjusting the leg accordingly. So we want to feel some sensation on the left side of our back and pelvis, but not where it puts us into, again, that sensation of uncomfortable or that sensation of pain or feeling very uncomfortable. So pressing away from the forearms. If you need a little bit less movement, you can stack your forearms forward. You can lower the chest. Sort of depends on what's happening with the front of your chest, and then we'll pause here. So we're still pressing away from the floor. The eyes are closed. I just want you to feel the sensation along the left side. So where do you notice this pose the most? Is it the same as it was on the right side? So do you notice what's charging on the left side, what's sort of speaking to you, and then using the exhalation to breathe into that space, but also do you notice a subtle difference between the left and the right? So for me, I feel more the right side of my sacrum, like the right side of my pelvis. This side, I feel it more in my lower back. So just using the exhalation to breathe towards the spine. You also bring your gaze to look down. It's definitely using a little bit more of your awareness. Awesome. So you can stay on the forearms. You can lower your chest. If you're quite comfortable, you can stack your forearms on top and rest the forehead on the stacked forearms. And then we'll pick up that left ankle and foot. So all you're doing here is rotating the hip and thigh forward or in, picking the left ankle and foot up. You're going to pause and hold. We are trying to relax the opposite leg, so that right leg, but you'll notice that it probably kicks in. And it's like it's trying to assist and help that left leg. So we're just pausing and holding here, reflecting on what's happening when we lift that ankle and foot up. Maybe even taking a pause, letting the hips and pelvis relax completely as well as the glutes. And then we'll work with it a few more times. So this is definitely my least ability of range. So this side is definitely my tighter side. I can't lift the ankle and foot off the floor, which is completely normal. So I always sort of like to go in and sort of feel the difference between these movements. I know, stemming from having 3 children and 3 births myself, I know that my hips are still a little bit asymmetrical, and I'm trying to work with, I have a slight rotation in the front of my right hip. So these are all really crucial movements that I've been working with to find more symmetry in my hips and pelvis after, of course, the beauty of childbirth. All right, so one more time, we'll lift that left ankle up. We're just going to try to pause and hold here. Good. Perhaps the foot is flexed, even seeing what happens when you point the toe, can go into the calf, and then we'll release the left leg to the floor. Go ahead and sort of slide and join the left leg to meet the right. We'll take the heels above the knees, and you can whisk the legs to the left side and whisk the legs to the right side. Good. We have one more movement here coming back to the shoulders. So we're going to give our hips and pelvis a bit of a break. I want you to take your hands kind of in a triangle position. So the palms of the hands are forward. Your index fingers and thumbs kind of touch like you're creating a diamond between those fingers. And then splay your elbows a little wider apart. So the elbows are maybe beyond shoulder and hip width apart. Okay, keep the gaze to look forward. So it's sort of a modification to our Sphinx Pose. But these are called Scapula Push-Ups. So we're going to create a little bit more range in the shoulder blades. So what I want you to do is slowly let your chest and heart sink towards the floor. Your gaze is just looking beyond the fingers. So at this point, the shoulder blades kind of squeeze in. And then the opposite movement, I want you to sort of push away from the floor and move your shoulder blades apart, but keep the lower belly on the mat. So we're going to sink the chest and the heart. So we're going to lower the chest and the heart down, shoulder blades draw in, pause and hold. So you might even feel like the shoulders roll onto the back. Good. And then the opposite direction, press into the palms of the hands and see if you can just move the shoulder blades apart without sort of lifting or peeling the ribs off the mat. Good. So chest and heart draw down, shoulders back. Good. Press into the forearms. Splay, allow the shoulders to kind of roll and hike towards the ears, but the shoulder blades, tips of the shoulder blades widen and move apart. So last one, chest and heart draw down. Shoulder blades squeeze together. Good. Even kind of fanning the elbows apart from one another. And then we'll exhale, push into the palms of the hands. Good. Finding that space between the shoulder blades. Spread the elbows apart. And then we'll lower. Take the hands underneath the shoulders, curl the toes under. Gently want you to move your way back into your wide-legged child's pose. So slowly begin to move the sit bones towards the heels. It's going to take some time. We just did a lot of extension in the back, and now we're moving into a flexed pose. So you can stack the forearms on top, resting the forehead on the stacked forearms. Reach the arms forward with the forehead to the floor. So as you exhale, letting the weight of the sit bones begin to fall towards the heels. One more big breath in. Let's slide the hands beneath the shoulders, and we'll press forward onto all fours. So moving into a twist through the upper thoracic. These ones are called tornado twists. You're going to keep your hips over top of your knees and your shoulders over top of your wrists. So on hands and knees. Taking a blanket if you need underneath your knees. So keep the right hand to the floor. Draw the left hand back behind your head. So this is all about upper thoracic work, especially for a feeding mom with lots of rounding through the shoulders. So I want you just to open the right arm up and wide, but keeping the hips parallel and square. So you probably won't be able to go very far, but that's okay. It's a really big movement. And then we're going to slowly start to lower this right elbow kind of to tap over to the left. And then we'll slowly start to lower this left elbow to tap over to the right. So take a big breath in. We're going to open up, keep pushing into the left hand. So the left hand is sort of resisting and allowing you a little bit more isolation. And then we bring over to tap. So big breath in. We're going to open up, push into the left hand, really honor what's happening. And then on the exhalation, moving in. So big twist, focusing again on one side. So right now we're just working with the left side. And it's the right hand that pushes into the floor to really dictate this movement on the left shoulder, left upper back. Good. Slowly lower the left palm of the hand down. Give your right wrist a nice big shake out, maybe even making fists with the wrist, and we'll switch. So this whole arm solid on the floor. Hips and pelvis aren't moving. Hug the sides of the pelvis to the midline of the body. So we'll bring the right hand behind the head. Take a big breath in. We're going to open up to the right side. Your gaze can look with it. And then as you exhale, drawing that right elbow to tap the left. So big breath in. We're now opening up through the right side. Hips stay square. So you're pushing into the palm of the left hand to resist the hips from moving. And then we just sort of gently tap over. Good. So wonderful way again to work with symmetry in the upper thoracic. So that's your upper back and shoulders. This one's the best one for all feeding mamas. Good. So hips stay square. Anchor down through the knees and the palm of the hand, the arm, to keep the hips and shoulders somewhat level as we begin to open up. And you can bring your gaze if it's safe and comfortable in your neck. Wonderful. One more big inhalation. We'll open up, push into that left hand, and then exhale, draw down. Place the right hand on the floor. Please go ahead and give your left wrist a nice shake, making fists with the wrists. Perfect. Curl the toes under, so spread the fingers nice and wide. And once again, we'll move into a downward dog. Nice deep knee bend here. So rooting and pressing through its opposite heel, moving from hip to hip and side to side. And we'll exhale, gently bend into the knees, and we'll come back down onto all fours. Moving your heels out to the side, we'll start to draw into a side laying position. So we want you to have that block handy beside you, and we'll place the block in between the knees. So at this moment, again, your knees sort of align with the front of the hips as best as you can, or you can shift the legs a little bit more forward, just making sure there's no tension or pressure on the pelvic joints. And then we'll reach the arm forward. We'll lay down on this right side. So my right ear on top of my right shoulder, and my knees, or the block is in between the knees. I have this left hand in front of me just to help make sure that I'm not going to roll back or roll too far forward. We will play around again with a bit of that internal rotation. Okay, really nice, finding some space and at least starting to stretch the low back. So it does move the sit bones slightly apart. What will happen here is you're going to squeeze the legs together, and again, you're going to lift that heel as high up as you can on this left side. So pausing here, I'm going to slowly start to lower the foot towards the floor. Good. So big breath in, you're going to squeeze the block, internally rotating the leg for a moment, pressing through the outer edge of the foot, so making that foot nice and active and wide. Good. A few more times. So we're hugging the sides of the pelvis at the midline of the body. Good. Really trying to activate through the outer edge of the foot, working with those internal rotations. So here's the opposite. So when we rotate the thigh in, we're working with this internal rotation. We're going to work with external rotation. So I want you to press the pads of the feet together. The block is there as more of a guide. Slowly start to lift this leg away from the block, but keeping the inner arches of the feet connected. So the mound of the big toe, and you're drawing the hip out and back. So that externally rotates. So lower the leg to the floor. I find it a little bit easier when my legs are closer to my shoulders. So we're going to push down through the feet. So you're really activating. So we just moved with internal rotation, and now we're trying to activate that external. And what feels harder for you? I want you to hold the external rotation a little bit longer. So as we exhale, we're taking a nice big breath to exhale out, pause and hold, okay? Keeping the feet connected together, really important part of this movement, okay? And so we're activating all the muscles now, usually in the glutes, right? So we have 3 layers of our glutes, just trying to challenge those muscles. We do want them strong, right? Strong glutes help with that pelvic floor function. So these are clams. Good. And the block is just there to rest, giving us a little, again, proprioception. It's nice to take the block in between the knees because it also releases some tension in the sacrum. Wonderful. So let's rest the block forward. Just taking a moment here. Nice big inhalation. Just trying to relax the top of this left hip and thigh. And then we'll push into the palm of the hand. And here's where I just want you to move over to the other side. So we'll take the block over. We are now laying on our left side. So reaching the arm in front, right palm of the hand on the floor, and then we'll take the block in between the knees again. So just pausing here for a moment. Let's first work with that internal rotation. This is my much more challenging side. It's my much more embarrassing side. So we're internally rotating the thigh. I'm just going to pause and hold. I'm still pushing into the outer edge of the foot. So when we internally rotate, we're working with pressing through the outer edge of the foot, right? Spiraling the thighs in. And when we move into the other portion of that external rotation, we're going to keep the inner arches of the feet connected. So just pausing here can be a really subtle movement, right? If it already feels like it's too much, especially again, if you're in your recovery at 6 weeks, you only need a couple of these at a time. Our yoga practice starts to progress as we practice more. So just really be kind to yourself when you start to move back into your yoga practice or back to your gym. We have to remember that our bodies have gone through a tremendous amount of change. So we have to be really patient with them. And we essentially have this new body, which is really magnificent in a lot of ways. It's expanded and moved and transformed in so many different ways. So we'll move to that external rotation. Here you're going to press, so really flex the feet. Feels a little bit odd because the block's in between the knees. And then we squeeze the feet together and seeing just how much you can externally rotate that top leg. You can slowly start to draw down. Take a nice big breath in. We do want to move on this exhalation. I always suggest that as you move through your postpartum recovery so that we can help work with the diaphragm and it will release some of that tension off the pelvic floor muscles. So how much can you draw? Hold. Let those muscles squeeze. Remember, it's about the quality of the stretch versus the quantity. Good. I always go to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm feeling that stretch, and now I'm done. Awesome. So one more. We're going to hold this one for a few moments. So draw the leg back, lots of connection with the mound of the big toe, right in the heel, and then we'll lower the leg. Great. Just remove the block. Pausing here for a moment, take a nice heavy breath in, big exhale out. So we'll switch onto our back from here. You're just going to lay completely flat on the back. It's going to feel pretty nice. Have that block again handy beside you. I want you just to sort of lift the pelvis up and then lower the back of the sacrum down. Bring the knees into the chest. You'll wrap your arms around your shins and you'll just take a nice little rock from side to side. You can also create some space between the knees. If there's an incision, it feels a little tender. Good. And then we'll lower the pads of the feet to the floor. So asymmetrical movement, we're going to work with little bridge and we're going to take this block right underneath the right foot first. So underneath the right foot first. We still want to feel like the knee is just above the ankle. So the shin is sort of vertical with the front wall. Wherever you feel as though you're going to keep the knee safe. We'll press the palms of the hands down. And then what you'll do is bring the left knee in towards the shoulder, interlacing the fingers in front of the knee. So pausing here for a moment, just take a nice big inhalation. If you need a little bit more width, it's okay to take that knee out to the side. Again, making sure there's no pressure on the incision. So it's a really small movement, but I want you to push into the right foot and lift your pelvis off the floor, okay? Pretty small movement. This is really going to start to challenge and strengthen the right side, good? So we're going to pause and hold here. Just take a nice big breath in. Maybe once you get the hang of this pose, you can lift the pelvis a little bit higher, but stay again within your pain-free range of motion. Shouldn't be any tension on the knee. If there is, you can also lift the toes off the block. One more big breath in. We'll exhale, slowly lower down vertebrae by vertebrae. Awesome. And then we'll switch out the legs. So just take the block over. You can move it over with your right foot to the left side. I like to use my right foot now to kind of guide that block. Should feel as though my knee is above the ankle. Taking a big inhalation here. Let's interlace the fingers around the front of the right knee. And as we exhale, we draw the right knee towards the right shoulder. So it's a nice gentle hip flexor stretch. So this is part one. If you just want to pause here and breathe into the left hip, you certainly can. If you're going a little further, we're going to push into the left leg, keeping the right leg as it is. So that's it. That's the pose, creating a little bit more demand, one at a time on the sacrum and the back of the pelvis. So you can lift a little further if you want, but please make sure you're staying within that pain-free range of motion. Just really lighting up those glutes on the left side. Beautiful. That's a hard one. One more big breath in, and then as you exhale, we slowly lower down vertebrae by vertebrae, so hugging through the lower belly as you do, and then we'll rest the right foot to the floor. You can draw the block slightly forward. When you bring the feet back towards the sit bones, shins are vertical, so lift the pelvis up to sort of reset, and then again, gently begin to roll down. Awesome. Knees come into the chest. You can either rock from side to side. It's also nice to lift the chin towards the chest, forehead towards the knees. Rolling over to the side, whichever side you have the most room. Bring your arm underneath your ear for some support. Pausing here, and then we'll push into the palm of that free hand. So we wanted to move you seated before we move into Shavasana. So I want to do a really nice, relaxing forward fold and twist. So sort of part of our cool down. We're going to grab that pillow that I suggested earlier or a bolster. We'll keep this left shin parallel with the front edge of the mat. And as you lean over to the left side, tuck the right heel beside your right hip. So either the toes are pointing back or you can place the outer edge of the foot on the floor. This pose is referred to usually as deer. So I like my foot and toes pointing back. My ankle can handle that. But if it's not the case, you might want to even draw your foot out to the side. Just be cautious of what that feels like on your knee. Then we'll take this bolster, and I want to first work with a restorative sort of forward fold. So once we have the leg position, sitting up nice and tall, you can bring the hands behind the back. So if you're really tight in your hip flexors, you're probably just going to feel this stretch, and this is part one. You can stay here. The nice big inhalation, sitting up tall. On the exhalation, we're just breathing into the right hip. So yes, your right sit bone's going to be off the floor. We're just breathing into the right hip. If you feel as though you can move forward, you can start to hinge forward from the hips. And the first point of contact is going to be your forearms on the bolster or pillow. And you can take it as high or as low as you choose. So we have a nice big inhalation here. On the exhalation, I just want you to breathe into the hips and the pelvis. So this is more of a cooling down posture. All those kind of movements of contracting and relaxing and finding that symmetry in the pelvis has done a lot of work. So this is yourself. So this is now giving yourself permission to just enjoy this stretch. So we have a nice big breath in. We feel the hinging from the hips, so gently tipping the pelvis forward as you begin to fold forward. So we'll stay here for a few more breaths. Maybe at some point, depending of course on your range and flexibility, you can hinge forward, stack your forearms on top. You can begin to lower yourself a little bit deeper. And as we hold poses quite a bit longer, if you're new to the practice of really deep stretching or yoga, you'll notice that as you relax one area, one muscle group, another one will kick in. It's the whole design and beauty of the stretching is we can really move into this posture and become very aware of what's happening in our body if we allow ourselves to feel that expression. So noticing here maybe how it's changed. Can you find some space between the sit bones? Good. So we'll have one more big breath in. On the exhalation, just gently push into the palms of the hands. We'll move into a twist, so take your right hand over to the left knee and then your left hand back behind you. Big breath in, so just a little counter twist. We're going to slowly begin to rotate the right ribs forward, left ribs back, and then just bring your gaze to look over that left shoulder. Settle down through the sit bone. Good. So releasing here through again the right hip flexors. One more big breath in, and then on the exhalation, square the shoulders forward, still lean over to that left side. We'll stretch the legs in front, nice little shake out from side to side, and then we'll switch. So as you lean over now to the right side, good, we'll bend to the right leg, the shin is parallel to the front edge, and then this left heel towards either the sit bone, depending on the foot placement. So again, I like the top of my foot on the floor with the toes pointing behind, but you can also rest the inner arch. Just careful of the knee in that position because it does rotate the knee a little bit. So that's why I prefer the toes pointing back. Okay. Having that bolster in front of you or the pillow, roll the shoulders back. We'll sit up nice and tall. So this is part one again, please. Again, if you're really tight, right? Mom's at 6 weeks, just perhaps staying upright, closing the eyes and breathing into the movement. We're trying to allow the front of this left hip and thigh to release. So if you want to go a little further forward, you can start to hinge forward from the hips. You want to tip the pelvis forward. You can begin to draw maybe the forearms. So if you can never reach the floor, bring the floor to you. That's why we use these props. So you can take the bolster underneath. Okay. We'll settle here with the eyes closed. So yes, the left sit bone is going to be lifting off the floor. Take a nice big breath in as you exhale. Just letting the weight of the sit bones release. Noticing what's happening again on this right hip versus the front of your left thigh. You relax the left quad. Oftentimes it engages a little bit, especially when we try to relax the glutes. It's always this fine dance between our muscles. One lets go, the other one kicks in. We know we bring that awareness to that space. We relax that muscle, another one kicks in. That's why I love the practice of yoga, and especially, some of these deeper stretches, is to really feel that sensation and acknowledge that change in movement, which is just what happened as you went through labor and delivery. So perhaps even hinging a little further forward if it feels comfortable in your back, your hips, your pelvis. So such a great stretch. Inhalation, we're breathing into the back line of the body, and on the exhalation, trying to move the breath into the spaces where we feel this pose and these sensations the most. So the one more big breath in. On the exhalation, okay, just sliding the hands underneath the shoulders. We'll move the shoulders over top of the hips. Without adjusting the legs, just move the bolster or pillow. Left hand to the right knee, right hand back behind you. So a little twist, take a big breath in, sitting up tall. And then as we exhale, we gently begin to open up to that right side. When you feel ready, you can look over your right shoulder, and then we have to actively breathe along the left side. So breathing into the front of the left hip, into the pelvis, softening down through the sit bones, but maintaining that lift and lengthen. The deep inhalation. On that exhalation, let's square the shoulders forward, leaning over to the right side, and we'll draw the legs in front. Good, nice little shakeout. So hopefully you feel more balance in the back of your sacrum or pelvis. We will take our Shavasana pose now. So I want you to take the bolster. We'll use it or your pillow underneath your knees. Please lay to that left or right side. Okay. When you press your feet to the floor, we lift the pelvis up. If you want a little reset, which I love to do, bring the knees into the chest. Find yourself with a gentle rock from side to side. And then we'll take a few moments rest into our Shavasana. So if you have this pillow or bolster, it's directly underneath your knees. That's going to be helpful to create a little bit more balance again and support into the pelvis, but also into the lower back. If you need something underneath your head, feel free to take some height so you can take that block. Then we find that balance between the left and right side of the body. So just noticing here if you need to make some small adjustments. The feet are hip width apart or a little wider. The arms can rest alongside the body with the palms of the hands facing up. Taking a deep inhalation. So on the exhalation, taking a deep inhalation, lifting towards the chest and the heart with a big audible exhale out. So one more as such, take a nice full inhalation to lift and expand, and then big audible exhale to let go. Quieting that space between the eyebrow center, keep the lips together, separate the teeth, and let the tongue slowly fall to the bottom of the mouth. So with each and every sensation of your exhalation, allowing the physical body to sink deeper and deeper into the mat. Letting go of any residue from your practice, any emotional stress or strain that no longer serves you at this moment. This time is for you, your awareness, your body, your breath, your soul, your spirit. We'll place one palm of the hand again, resting on the abdomen or belly, and the other palm of the hand to the heart. Coming back to that equal breath. So inhale, just noticing here where you have the tendency to draw the breath first. Which hand rises first? Using the exhalation, continue to feel heaviness through the shoulders, the spine, and the back of the pelvis. So can you begin to move the breath into the opposite direction? So if you're generally a chest breather, can you once again breathe into the belly? And if you're a belly breather, can you move the breath towards the chest first? Trying to synchronize and create that balance between the breath, between the movements of the breath at the front line. The intention behind our yoga practice isn't necessarily to perfect a pose, to become really good at something. When we become really good at something, we're no longer challenged. So it's nice to always move into the places where we feel the resistance. That's where we start to open and grow. It's the same thing in motherhood. So now can you find the balance between the belly breath and the chest breath? So when you inhale, can you find both hands rise at the same time? Nice full breath in. And as you exhale, big heavy breath out. One of the challenges of motherhood is finding that balance in all aspects of our life. The balance between who we are, the balance between raising a child, the balance between who we are and honoring our partners. And that exhalation is very significant as we surrender into these spaces, as we surrender into the unknown, knowing that we can really do only the best that we possibly can. And healing and honoring and being in service of your child and your partner and your family first starts with healing and honoring yourself. So the balance isn't between us and what we can do for other people. The balance is between us and what we recognize in other people. The balance is between what we recognize in ourselves and how it reflects and manifests. Just resting the palms of the hands down on the floor. I'm going to leave you here, sweet mamas. Please take your time. If you have a few more moments, I suggest you just lay here in this peace and comfort, surrounding yourself with your warmth. I hope you have a wonderful day. Namaste.